Hello. In this lesson, we are going to be taking our dashboard project further a bit. We're going to be adding search function. For instance, if I search the keyword graphics, I should be able to see graphics pop up. Okay, what makes up the search feature is not something huge. However, I am going to show you step by step how to get that done. One cool thing about this project is we're not going to be rewriting most of the logic, because in my previous video where I spoke about employee directory, we did similar thing. For instance, if you search for this, you're going to see this. So since we have this code, all we need to do is just to locate where the code is and copy the chunk that we need and customize it to suit our current logic. Let us dive into it and see how that works. I'm just going to close this and, of course, just maintain our dashboard. So I'm going to navigate right away to Git. I think the Git should be by this segment. So the link to this very repository or employee directory will be added to the description of this video. However, I will encourage you to locate the course and take it so you can understand how this thing was built from scratch. All we need is just this 18 lines of JavaScript. And before we copy it, let's just go make sure that we're ready to use it in our project. So if I come back to our project, if you look at what we have at the bottom, we have the chat.js, right? Now that the JavaScript file or the JavaScript lines will become so much, it doesn't make sense having it together with the HTML. I think it's the right time for us to create our JavaScript file separately. So let's dive into it and see how we can do that. If you look at the project repository, you have an asset file, right? In the asset file, you just have the CSS, which is helping us to make our project look beautiful. Similarly, we're just going to go ahead and create a folder as well called JS. In the JS folder is where we are going to have all the scripts or any JavaScript related file so that it's easier for us to manage and maintain. In the JS folder, I'm just going to go ahead to create our first script, which is just going to be script.js. Now that we have our script.js, the next thing I'm going to do is to copy the JS file just below here, this segment. I'm just going to copy it. I am going to just copy this, and we don't need this tag anymore. Oh, I think we do need it. Let's just leave it like that for now. I'm just going to come to my JS and I'll save it. Let me just reformat a bit. So I'm just going to hold down my Shift and the Tab key just to format it a bit. Now I think it looks pretty much okay. And if I save and go back to our browser just to see what we have, you can see that the chart is not longer there. The chart is no longer there. And it's basically because the HTML document is yet to be aware of where the JavaScript stays. So what we need to do right now is to just go tell the HTML where it can load the JavaScript. Navigating back to the HTML, right, just still in this script, but instead of writing the HTML inside, we're just going to declare the path, the source. So I'm just going to say RC, which is the source. Now, let us try to understand where the file is. The file can be located in the asset folder. So which means we're just going to say, in fact, I'm not getting the right prediction. So I think I need to change my interpreter. I'm just going to say HTML. Yours should be HTML default because I wrote some Python project, so it's selected Python framework. Okay, now that I am using HTML interpreter, I should be able to get predictions. And for me to be sure, if I just type assets, you can see the path showing by default. I can just navigate to JS. Then I can just say I want script.js. And if I just save and go ahead and check, we have our chart back. In other words, JavaScript and HTML now work together. Let's do more thing with that. So navigating to my HTML, navigating to my JavaScript, now that we know that it's working, I can just go ahead and copy the script here. Just copy the script. I'll just bring the script just down here. I can just paste it below. But just for us to understand what the script is doing, we can leave a comment and just call it search project. Just call it project. Okay, so a couple of things need to change. In fact, instead of us just having employee, or we can just change the function. We can change the function name if you want. You can change the function name to, let's say, display project. Instead of employee, you can just go ahead and say display project. Once you have display project, just make sure that where you call the function, you replace the name as well. I'm just going to replace it here. This is where we trigger the function whenever there's an event. Now, this is really, really cool. However, we are not there yet. One thing we need to just understand is, one, we need a way to target each of the projects, right? And secondly, we need a function to do something, to hide every of the project. And secondly, display the one that matches the search. That is what this function is going to be doing. And at this point is where we trigger the events. Take, for instance, whenever the user clicks or whenever the user inserts a particular input, and you can see what we are listening to right here. So these are pretty much straightforward. But if you want to understand how it works more, you can check out employee directory to see how that works. Okay, let's dive into it. Before we start doing so much with our JavaScript, let us navigate back to our HTML and see how we can format some segments of the document. So coming back to the HTML, there are two segments we need to really pay attention to. And let me say from the front end, I will just display. So now we need to listen to events from the search input. Secondly, we also need to be able to sort projects. So which means we're using two events. We are going to be having event from this segment, from the form, and events from the select. These are very common ways that you can filter or get user input in your project. So pay attention while I show you how to get this done. Coming back to the HTML, we need to restructure the way this select works. In fact, I think the select should be here. Yes, exactly. So we have our select here. We need to do a bit of restructuring right here. There's no need using a form anymore. And it's basically because we are not necessarily going to be submitting. We just need to be able to understand and filter based on the select. So if you like, you can leave this form, but for some reasons, you might not want to leave it because you don't want to use it. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and change this to a div. In fact, we can just remove this entirely. We can just remove it entirely and just index this backward. And if I save it, let's go check what our design look like. You can see that our design still pretty much remain the way it is, but this design I change a bit. Let me return it so you see what I mean. You can see just this very little style. So the way we can fix it is to locate our style, like what style is rendering the form. So let's just search. Let's search for form. So you can see you have your title, you have the form. Let's go back and see. So you have the title here. You can see that you're targeting the form. So instead of targeting the title versus form, how about we just target the select itself? So I'm just going to come here, in fact, and change all the elements with the form. Let's try to confirm if we have more. So this is search, that's fine. Just trying to make sure that search, anyone with the title class. As you can see, this is search. Those are okay. Okay, so let's just remove. All we just need to do is to remove. And if I save and come back to our design, you can see that it maintains the same approach. So this is cool. Now that we've been able to address that, let's see what next we can do. Now, the way we can really grab all of this value, it's in these options. In other words, you can grab the value of an option selected, which means at every point, if I say finish project, whatever value I give to the finished project, which is finish, is the value I will get in JavaScript. How about we just try to readjust some of these things a bit? So the challenge we are going to have is we need a way to be able to select default value, like something that is empty, so that way we can do things and even it's going to work. It's not going to display anything at some point. So let's just say by default, because if you refresh the page right now, it's selecting recent project, but that's not what we want. We want something empty. So if I just come here and so we can just say option and just give it empty value. However, you can just give it dash, right? And if you save it, you can see, so we can tell right now that by default, we have an empty value, which makes a lot of sense for us, right? So, and if you look at what we have on the category aspect, you have the recent project, you have the finish and ongoing project. You also have the stalled project. That's projects that couldn't be continued, that was stopped at some point. Okay, our select feature makes a lot of sense right now. Oh, we're here to delete the form. Let's just get rid of it. Doesn't serve any purpose anymore. We can just bring this backward. And if we come back and refresh, everything still remains the way we want them to be. Now, let us try to understand our project a bit. I mean, all of these projects. Navigating back to the HTML, if you check, you can see that we have the project div that wraps every single project. Now, this is what we need to target in JavaScript. We need to target each of these projects and do something to them. Now, if you know your HTML very well, you can add data attributes to your tag. However, if you don't still know how this works, you can just go to skills.instincthub.com to see how you can use data attributes in HTML. You can enroll for our HTML fundamentals and you'll be able to get yourself started with how most of these HTML tags work. Let's dive into what we need to do right now, the data attributes. right? Right now, we need to be able to tell if a project is finished or if it's not. But if you look at what we have here, we can pick all the gold color as finished, then purple color as which other category do we have? Maybe recent. The choice is all yours. The essence of this lesson is just to make you understand that it is possible to determine what happened to a particular div or a particular element on your page. So I'm just going to make the first data status. Data status. You're going to see how we can use that in JavaScript. I'm going to tag this as, I think we made a mistake there. We're just supposed to type it outside as it's on. Yes, data status. We want it to be finished. Now, let me show you one trick. You will notice that this finished value is the same thing as the value given to finished. So all we are just going to do with JavaScript is, if whatever is selected carries the value of finished, display whatever project has the finished data status. You're going to see how that works. Another thing we want to be able to add is finished project. You can add a title attribute. Now, let me show you what I mean. Sometimes you might not know what exactly this thing means, the color. But when the user over on it, we want to be able to display more information to the user. And this is where the title attribute plays a very huge role. Let me show you what I mean. Another attribute in HTML is the title attribute. It just allows you to give the way it sounds, like title, to a particular tag. For me to do that, I can just go ahead and say, this is the finished project. If I save it, and if I over any other one, you see that nothing is happening. But the moment I over on this, you can see finished project. Right? This makes a lot of sense. Okay, so the next thing we can do is we can just copy this same thing and go to other project tag just to make things easier for us. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing and go to the next project, which is project 2. Just paste it. And in this very one, we can call it ongoing project. So we can just give this to ongoing projects. And if we come and over on this, you can see all ongoing project. Makes a lot of sense. Right, so the next one, which is this orange color, we can call it stalled project. So I can just come and paste. I'll just call this stalled project. If I save it and we come back here, you can see that it's stalled project. So that works. Okay, why not just we call this one finished project? So just go to project 4 and just call it finished project. Let's see. We have this 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's see. We've used recent. So fourth project can be recent. So we just call it recent project. The fifth one can maintain the second value. The second project is called, let's see, this is project 1. Project 2 is called ongoing. So let's give the fifth project ongoing. Just call it ongoing. Then the last one can be, let's see what the third is. This is the third project, stalled project. In fact, I just copy it. And if we go to the sixth project, we are just going to save it. We missed some T and some closing tag. If I save it, and if you over on all of them, you can see this is stalled project, ongoing project, ongoing project. So we just made it so because of the color grading. Then if you check this one, finish project, and you check this one, recent project. Now we are set to make this happen with JavaScript. And in the next lesson, we're going to do just that. So see you in the next one.